Hello, everybody. My name is Jason William Thompson, and this is the Nintendo story abridged. Now, for those of you who know me, know that I have an obsession with Nintendo. And why not? I think that Nintendo is one of the greatest companies to come out of the 80s. And by 80s, I mean the 1880s. Now, obviously, back then, Nintendo was not making video games. Rather, they made these, Hanafuda cards. Hanafuda cards were primarily used for gambling, and Nintendo's biggest customer was the Japanese crime gang known as the Yakuza. Nintendo would continue to primarily make playing cards for about 70 years. But then in the 1960s, the playing card industry went into decline. And so Nintendo knew that in order to survive, they had to do something different. And by different, they did really different. For example, here are some of the products that they made between 1960 and 1979. They made a remote control vacuum cleaner. They made Popeye the Sailor Man brand instant food. They even made a love tester, had a taxi service, and ran a chain of love hotels where you could rent a room for an hour. And if you're going to run a chain of love hotels, why not sell baby products? Because that's what Nintendo did. But none of this junk sold well. That's why we don't see it today. But what did sell well was toys, especially the toys made by a man named Gunpei Yokoi, the inventor of various things such as the Game Boy and the almighty Virtual Boy. The toys at this time, for example, the Ultra Hand up there, were selling over 1 million units. And I think it was at this time that Nintendo realized that its future was the same as its past, entertainment. So in the 1970s, Nintendo began manufacturing arcade machines for Japan. Most of these games were knockoff of more successful games like Space Invaders or Breakout. In 1980, Nintendo noticed that there was a growing arcade market in the United States, and that market was dominated by Space Invader clones, and Nintendo wanted a piece of this pie. They knew that they needed something fresh, something original, something Americans had never experienced before. So they brought over Radar Scope, which was essentially a Space Invaders clone. Nintendo tried selling Radar Scope to arcade owners by telling them that they can experience the invasion of the Sonic Gamma Raiders with supernatural laser sound. Now, I've played this game. There's nothing supernatural about the lasers. It just sounds like any other game from the 1980s. And so, unsurprisingly, this game failed. In fact, Nintendo had 2,000 units sitting in a warehouse with no buyers. Arakawa, the president of Nintendo of America at that time, came up with a unique idea to get these Radar Scope machines sold. He suggested that Nintendo created a new game and to ship that game to the United States as a conversion kit for all of these Radar Scope machines. The trouble is that they needed a new game that preferably wasn't a Space Invaders clone, and all of Nintendo's best developers were working on other projects. I'm guessing they were other knockoff games. So they held a contest internally to see who can come up with an idea with an original game. And the winner was this man. His name is Shigeru Miyamoto. You may know him as the father of Mario. And Miyamoto was this reclusive kid who had shaggy hair, kept to himself, and most importantly, he was not a game designer, but rather he was an artist. When he had graduated college, he had aspirations of becoming a comic book writer. But I think because he wasn't a game designer, this allowed him to come up with ideas that were outside of the norm at the time. Now, the game that Miyamoto came up with was none other than a Popeye the Sailor Man game. This wasn't too strange because, after all, remember, Nintendo sold Popeye the Sailor Man instant food products. But King Features, who owned the IP, told him no. Undeterred, Miyamoto just changed Popeye into Mr. Video, Olive Oil into Lady, and Bluto into Donkey Kong. Arakawa's plan worked. These 2,000 converted radar scope machines were sold quickly, and Nintendo could not keep up with the demand. Here's a fun fact. If you ever go to an arcade and you see a red Donkey Kong machine, that is one of these 2,000 radar scope machines that was converted into Donkey Kong. And if you want to see one, there's actually one at the Draftcade in Zona Rosa. Now, we know the rest of the story. Throughout the 80s to the present day, Nintendo would go on to become a multi-billion-dollar entertainment company that is synonymous with video games. So what are some of the applications from this short story? Well, I think the first one is to be willing to try new things to avoid becoming obsolete. That programming language that you're using today might not be there in 15 years. That newfangled JavaScript framework you're using today might not be there in 15 days. So try new things, even if it seems like a bad idea. Second, when you are backed in a corner, find a third way. Arakawa could have declared bankruptcy or sold these radar scope machines for a deeply discounted price. But he thought of a third way, and that third way of converting these machines into a new game changed the industry forever. Finally, look for ideas from unexpected people. Nintendo could have relied on their top game designers and shipped out another lousy game clone to replace Radar Scope. But they gave everyone a voice to find the They gave everyone a voice to find the next best thing. When you're looking for that idea, don't just rely on the people who look and act just like you. Look for a diverse perspective. Now, obviously, there is so much more than what I covered today. After all, Nintendo is 130 years old. If you're interested in knowing more about Nintendo, I recommend these two books. Super Mario by Jeff Ryan is a nice narrative with some minor inaccuracy. And it's a fun story to listen to, especially around the creation of Donkey Kong. There's more drama in the creation of Donkey Kong than an episode of Monday Night Raw. Second, I would recommend, if you can find it, reading this book, The History of Nintendo, Volume 1 through 3. But it is a bit pricey, and you can't really find it in any libraries, and there are no digital copies. So if you don't have the stomach to pay $200 for a book, come see me. I've got a copy, and I'll let you take a look at mine. Also, I have my box of Hanafuda cards. So if you want to see this or any other rare Nintendo memorabilia, or talk about any of the things I had to cut from this talk, come see me. Thank you so much for your attention today. You guys have a great rest of your DECCON.